Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a look at something, well, incredibly practical that many of us dream of achieving: learning English easily. You've given us a fantastic resource, a step-by-step guide, really packed with simple, actionable advice. It feels like it's truly designed for anyone, whether you're a student, a teacher, or just someone looking to unlock new opportunities.
Absolutely. Our goal for this deep dive is really to extract the most impactful insights from these sources you sent over. We're going to try and walk you through what seems to be a clear, confidence-building path to English proficiency straight from the wisdom in this guide.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The sources kick off with a foundational idea that might actually surprise some people, which is that you absolutely don't need to be perfect to speak English. That feels like a weight off the shoulders right from the start, doesn't it?
It's powerful, yeah. What really jumps out from this first part is the strong emphasis on overcoming fear. The guide uses that wonderful analogy like learning to ride a bicycle. You might wobble, you might fall at first, but it's the consistent effort getting back on that leads to mastery. It's not really about avoiding falls, but about persistence.
That's spot on. And the core tip is literally speak without fear. It even encourages you make mistakes proudly because mistakes are signs that you are learning. But, for someone who might be incredibly self-conscious, how does the guide actually help bridge that gap between saying be fearless and, well, the reality of feeling nervous?
That's a really good question because, it is easy to say don't be afraid, but much harder to actually do. I think the guide tackles this implicitly by just focusing on action, by pushing you to speak at all, even if it's imperfect. It's like you're building those neural pathways. Research kind of suggests that early active production, even just a few words, helps retention faster than only passive listening. It's about building those little micro wins. They gradually chip away at that initial fear, and it helps you reframe those mistakes. They're not failures. They're just essential data points for getting better.
Right, data points. I like that. So once that mindset that embracing imperfection is sort of in place, where does the guide suggest we physically start building our English? It jumps straight into vocabulary, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The sources get very practical right away. They suggest a really manageable daily target. Start with 5-10 English words daily. And what's key here isn't necessarily the exact number, 5 or 10, but the consistency. Doing it daily. This chunking strategy, well, it's backed by cognitive science. Our brains are just wired to handle information better in these small, regular doses, prevents overload.
And they make it incredibly tangible. They recommend learning the meanings in Bengali and then immediately making simple sentences. They give that concrete example, water, meaning pin kam, and then a sentence like, I drink water, which translates to Tom Bilo. That direct link feels really useful.
It really is. That comparative approach uses your existing language knowledge, sort of like a bridge to the new language. And the practical tip with it, keep a small notebook of words, revise it daily. That just hammers home the importance of active recall. You're not just passively looking at words, you're actively trying to remember them, which is vital for moving stuff from short-term to long-term memory.
Okay, next up then. The sources tackle grammar, but they assure us not to feel overwhelmed. What's their approach to this subject? Because grammar often trips people up, right? It can feel intimidating.
Definitely. But the guide is wise here. It advises starting with the absolute basics. It specifically mentions subject plus verb plus object and gives that clear example, he eats rice.
Yeah.
Just to break that down quickly. The subject is who's doing the action. The verb is the action, eats the object, receives the action. Rice, getting that simple structure down gives you like an instant blueprint for making tons of basic sentences.
So it's about learning the core architecture first.
Okay.
And then for something like tenses, which can feel like a total maze, the tip is learn tenses slowly, one by one, and again, emphasizing using Bengali examples to understand better. What's the real benefit of that slow, comparative way of learning tenses?
Well, tenses are just how English tells us when something happens past, present, future. They're pretty crucial for clear communication. The guide's phased approach, connecting back to Bengali examples, really respects that learning curve. So instead of trying to gulp down all the rules at once, you're building understanding bit by bit, linking new ideas to things you already know. It's a powerful way to make those abstract grammar rules feel more concrete and, frankly, less scary.
Okay, this next part is where it gets really interesting, I think, for anyone who genuinely wants to sound confident and fluent. The guide says, to speak well, you must listen more. How does it suggest actually putting that into practice?
Right. And the suggestions for listening are great because they're so accessible. Things like watch English cartoons, kids' stories, or short YouTube videos with subtitles. These aren't just engaging. They often use simpler vocabulary and clearer pronunciation, which makes them ideal starting points. You're not jumping into complex lectures immediately.
And then there's the active part. The tip to repeat the sentences you hear. Try to copy the way they speak. Plus, that specific recommendation to speak to your mirror, starting with simple stuff like, my name is your name, I am a teacher, or I love to learn English. That mirror practice. It feels a bit awkward maybe just thinking about it, but why is it supposed to be so effective?
It feels awkward partly because it's a totally low-pressure private space. You get to build confidence without any fear of judgment. This mix of passive listening and active imitation creates this really crucial feedback loop. You're training your ear to the sounds and rhythms, and then you're actively training your mouth, your tongue, to make those sounds. It builds muscle memory for speech, basically, and it helps you get over that initial shyness by practicing with, well, your toughest critic yourself.
Beyond just listening and speaking, the sources also stress daily reading and writing for, like, comprehensive learning. How do they suggest weaving those in?
Yeah, reading is shown as a direct route to expanding your vocabulary more organically. The guide suggests practical starts that aren't too intimidating. Things like children's storybooks, English newspapers, but maybe just the easy articles, or even your school books. The beauty of reading is you see words in context. That helps you remember them much better than just, memorizing lists.
And the writing tips seem equally practical for fitting into a daily routine. After reading a paragraph, write it in your own words. Or even just write 5 lines about your day in English. These feel like concrete, achievable exercises. It's not just about filling a page, is it? There's more to it.
Exactly. That integration, reading for input, writing for output, it's key. When you rewrite something in your own words or you describe your day, you're actively pulling out and using the vocabulary and grammar you've been taking in. It's about making the language a natural part of how you think and operate daily and actively checking if you can produce it yourself.
Now, here's a piece of advice our sources offer that I think many language learners might overlook. Don't study alone. It specifically recommends making a group with friends who also want to learn English.
Yes, and what's really valuable there is the focus on social reinforcement and peer support. The explicit goal is to talk to each other for 10 minutes every day, only in English. Learning with others, well, it can seriously boost your motivation and keep you accountable. Plus, it gives you immediate, low-stakes chances to practice in a real conversation.
And they even suggest making it fun, creating a no Bengali, only English game. They say it's both fun and powerful. Why is adding that element of play so important for keeping going?
Play just makes learning feel less like a chore, doesn't it? It becomes more of an enjoyable activity, and that directly impacts consistency. When something's fun, you're just far more likely to stick with it long term. Plus, the social aspect gives you that immediate feedback, sometimes corrections, and a sense of a shared journey. It turns what could be an isolating task into a supportive group effort. Practice becomes a habit, not a burden.
Right, making it sustainable. And finally, the sources really hammer home this idea of consistency. Learning English is compared to growing a plant. Water it daily, and one day you'll see it blooming beautifully. It's a nice image.
It is a lovely metaphor. It perfectly captures that long-term incremental nature of picking up a language. It's not about these huge sporadic bursts of effort, but that steady daily attention. And the specific tip is actually quite liberating. Practice just 30 minutes daily, that's enough. Knowing you don't need to find hours and hours every day is, well, it's encouraging. Those short, regular sessions are genuinely much more effective for building and solidifying those neural pathways than, say, cramming for hours once a week.
So when we boil it all down, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into your sources? It seems to reveal a really clear, quite approachable path. Learning English isn't about being brilliant overnight, is it? It seems much more about cultivating patience, committing to that consistent daily practice, and crucially, holding on to a positive mindset that actually embraces imperfection. It really just comes down to consistently telling yourself, yeah, I can learn English.
Absolutely. And if we just zoom out for a second, these core principles, consistency, building small habits, embracing imperfection, they aren't just for learning a language. I mean, imagine applying this sort of fearless, systematic approach to any new skill or challenge you face in life. It's really about building momentum through those small, consistent actions, and crucially, not letting the fear of messing up stop you from even starting or from continuing when things get tough.
So what might you, listening now, take away from this focus on simplicity? Maybe consider how these seemingly small daily micro habits, those 5-10 words, the 30 minutes of practice, the speaking without fear, How they don't just build language fluency, but maybe they also cultivate a really powerful discipline and self-belief that could potentially ripple out into every area of your life.
It does make you think, doesn't it? How might truly embracing that idea that mistakes are signs that you are learning? How might that philosophy transform other areas where you currently hold back, maybe because you're afraid of not being perfect?
That's a great thought to leave you with. Keep learning.